Hi and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for another week of workforce readiness. Today we're going to talk about a pretty big topic. We're going to talk about understanding the interview process. And in order for you to do well on interviews, it's really important to take a step back and just fully understand what the interview process entails and how you could practice to do the best you can. With interviews, it's all about practice, practice, practice. And hopefully, the things that we cover today will help you keep some things in mind so you could develop the portions of your skills that are necessary for you to do well with the interview process. So, we're going to take a look at this diagram, and this is the diagram we've been uh, taking a look at just to give us a good understanding of the job search process. And as you can see, the attend an interview is actually comes at the end of having accomplished several things. And so it's actually a big milestone. It's actually a big goal. So if you find yourself being invited to an interview, you are in a good position. And if you do well in the interview, chances are you'll be selected to move on to becoming an employee for that company. So there's a lot of things that depend on that interview. So it's really important for you to do well. Okay, so let's take a look at interviews. So interviews are essentially your introduction meeting with the employer. After you complete an application and a resume for a job, you'll be asked to come into an interview. And interview generally they could take different forms, but most common in the workplace environment is that you'll have an interview with yourself and a couple of different people from the company. It could be one or two or three, and it could be their opportunity to ask you a couple of questions. Most likely, they're going to be reading off prompts, so they're going to be reading a prompt of questions that they will ask you, and they'll be just kind of taking notes of your responses, and seeing how well you answer some of these questions. They'll ask you questions about your experience, so it's really good to keep in mind and to talk about your experience at some length. And if you're if you're able to move forward from the interview, you'll be able to hopefully get that job. As I mentioned before, there's several formats, but usually that format where you sit down with a couple of people from the company is most popular. So preparing for the interview, there's a couple of things you should do for the interview. You should know the company, you should understand the job description, and also you should practice interviewing. For knowing the company, once you get the request to go to a meeting, to attend a meeting, you want to look up their website and then look up their location and their shop, etc. So you want to find the location, and you also want to get a good idea of what type of services they have to offer. The reason why you want to do this is because it'll give you more information about the type of work that they do, and you'll be able to maybe formulate a couple of follow-up questions at the very end of the interview, and you could maybe have a brief conversation about what type of worker they're looking for and what type of skills they're looking for as well in a worker. Understand the job description, research the job, ask people who do the job what the job entails. Sometimes, I think at minimum, it's a good idea to reread the job description and just kind of read it thoroughly. And also, when you give responses to their questions, kind of pepper your responses with some of the terms that they have in there. And also, if they're looking for certain qualifications, kind of focus your discussions and your answers around your experience in that qualification and why you would be a strong candidate. So it's always a good idea to understand the job and also just kind of practice, no matter how seasoned you may be. So you could be a person that has 15 years of experience. It's still a good idea to kind of review the job, because like that, you know exactly what you're interviewing for. And so sometimes when you sit down with employers and you have a person that don't have a good understanding of what the job requires, they could be interviewing for, let's say, a managerial position or something higher, and then obviously that may kind of raise some red flags, and or give them the impression that you're not very sure what you're applying for. And so as direct and as succinct as you could be, that's the best thing to do. Okay, and also practice interviewing. So mock interviews are good. You could talk to your friends, and you could sit down and act like you're interviewing, and they could ask you a couple of questions, and you could practice answering. And the good thing about these mock interviews is they could give you suggestions, and you could kind of use that information to make your responses better. And so, like that, you're a little bit more prepared, and a little bit more comfortable in answering questions. These mock interview questions, they really help. So anyone that is available to help you, that would be good. Ask your colleagues, ask your friends or your coworkers or your co-students, and that should help you immensely in preparing for a job. So at the end of the interview, ask at least two relevant questions. Examples would be, what would you please describe the duties of the position? What kind of duties might I expect day to day? What do you like best about working here? What qualities and skills are you looking for in a candidate? And also ask contact information or a business card. So these follow-up questions, they are good to show that you're a little bit engaged, or that you're engaged in the conversation, and that you're sharp and to the point, and that you have questions of yourself for yourself. So these are just some examples, but you could yourself formulate your own questions and then ask those questions during the interview. Usually, questions that have to do about pay, or let's say benefits, that may be outside of the scope of the interview, and so you may want to reserve those questions to the HR department, or other departments that may be helping with the hiring process. Another question you could ask would be, um, another good question that you could ask is, what is the next step in the hiring process? And so sometimes um, there may be a second interview or a third interview, or there may be an additional step that you have to do with the interview process. And it's good to get that information up front. You may also want to ask, when will they make their decision? And that will at least give you a good idea of when to anticipate their response. So these are some items that you should keep in mind during the interview. So one of the most important things is arrive 10 minutes early, plan ahead for transportation, take a trip prior to the interview to make sure that you know where to go. And also, in many places, you may have to keep in mind where the parking is. So sometimes parking may be a little tricky, and so it might be a little challenging for you to get there. So also keep that in mind. Dress appropriately. Use the presentation checklist. Make sure that you're wearing interview clothes that are clean and ironed. You also want to make sure that you, at times, um, are are dressed professionally. And if you want to get an idea of what type of dress they're anticipating, you may, when you're having the initial conversations with HR, you may want to ask them, what type of dress are they anticipating. Generally, most interviews are going to require you to dress professionally, and so at times that may require a blazer, or just formal wear. things like that. So you want to definitely leave a good impression, and so the things that you wear are absolutely very important. So also be confident. So make eye contact with the employer, and be engaging. Nod your head whenever they're asking questions, and also be confident to make eye contact with the employer and let your personality shine. And so everyone has their personality, and you want to have that interview kind of let your qualities shine. And if you're friendly, that's all obviously a very good trait. So you want to show that friendliness and show that you're not overly formal, but that you're a pleasant person to work with. So during the interview, it's really important to pay attention, listen to the questions carefully, and ask them to be repeated if you need. Answer the questions with specific examples. So when preparing for an interview, you could anticipate receiving questions about what was a project that you are very proud of, and you could prepare a little description of what you accomplished that you were so proud of, and so that would help you discuss it at length. Also, ask specific questions about the position you are interviewing for. So, what is the specific schedule for the position, and let them know what you have to offer, uh, leading them to ask more questions. So, ask specific questions about the position you are interviewing for. So, be specific about your questions that you have. So, for example, what is the specific schedule for this position? Let them know that what you have to offer, and also through doing this, you could lead them on to asking on more questions about you. And so that's a really good technique that you could also kind of build off of. Common mistakes in an interview. We have a nice list of items here. Ah, I went too far. Okay, so these are common mistakes made in the interview process. So always keep this in mind, and practicing with another person will help you kind of refine and polish your interview technique so that you avoid these major issues. So things like poor personal appearance, lack of maturity, poor eye contact, shows little interest, does not discuss strengths, is nervous or lacks confidence, does not ask questions about the position, gives vague responses to questions, and other things like that. So you definitely want to practice and build your strengths so that you avoid these common mistakes. When you talk, you want to definitely think before you speak, and you want to show confidence, and you want to show that you are interested in the position. You want to show eye contact, and you want to show maturity and the overall ability to fulfill the needs of the position. So overall, I think employers, they want to be able to see you and and feel confident that you could fill the needs of the position, and so they need to see you as that position. And so um, just have confidence in yourself, practice beforehand, and make sure that you answer your questions in a confident manner. So I always recommend my students to role play. So you could role play with your family, friends. But some things that you could do when you're role playing is when you greet the interviewer, you want to be enthusiastic and shake hands and smile. You want to concentrate on your posture, eye contact, and body language. You want to listen to the questions being asked, and you want to keep your answers concise and to the point. And so the more that you practice, the better. The best practice could be you going on many interviews. So unfortunately, that may be the best practice. So any interview is good practice, I always say. But aside from that, another good way to practice would be to just practice with your friends and family, and that should help you get comfortable being in that position of answering interview questions. Uh, in today's world, you may have to interview online through Zoom, and so keep that in mind as well. So if you're interviewing online or through Zoom, you may not be able to shake hands, but you'll definitely be able to smile, and you'll definitely be able to work on your posture, eye contact, and body language, things of that sort. After the interview, it's a good idea for you to thank the interviewers for their time. Whether you get the job or not, being polite and networking is important. Your appreciation will be noted. uh, Gather the contact information for the people that you've interviewed for. So make note of their names. Perhaps after the interview, ask their names once again, so you could write down their name, and make sure to send them an appreciation letter. Even appreciation emails work well, so it doesn't always have to be a physical thank you note. Okay, so gather information, contact information. So you want to remember the company, you want to know how to contact the interviewer, and other things like that. Uh, so, um, so, so you want to make sure to at least get that information before you leave. And then finally, it's important for you to send a thank you letter, card, or email. And so, it's just a nice touch, and many times it helps them realize that you are really interested. And the letter could be something very short and sweet. It doesn't have to be very long. But let's see the next page. You could include a thank you note card, a thank you phone call, or thank you email preferred. Nowadays, most of the work is done through email, so it's really preferred to go through email. But what do you write? So you could just write complete contact information, both you and the interviewer's full names. Thank the interviewer for their time spent with you. Include your interest in the position and that you're looking forward to hearing from them. And also include how you can be an asset for the company. Finally, include an appropriate closure like thank you very much, or sincerely, etc. So something very short and sweet. It doesn't have to be very long. It doesn't have to be as long as the cover letter, but just a little nice a note that will let them know that you're appreciative of their time, and that you look forward to hopefully hearing from them. Positive news, finger crossed. Okay, so that essentially covers today's presentation on preparing for an interview. So use this information to practice and to make yourself a little bit more comfortable with the interview process. As you interview, no doubt you'll become better at becoming an interviewer. And perhaps sometime in your career, you'll be interviewing other people. And so you'll be able to see people at the other side of the table, and evaluate their questions. So best of luck on your interview endeavors, and I hope you have lots of success. Thank you very much for joining us this week, and we will see you next time.